My father sold me to a wealthy family to pay his gambling debt. My name is Marlo Whitaker, and this is the story of how my own blood traded me like I was nothing more than a poker chip on a dirty table in Atlantic City, and how I made sure they would never forget the daughter they tried to erase. I grew up in a narrow two-story house in coastal Maine, the kind with peeling white paint and a porch that sighed every time someone stepped on it. My father, Callahan Whitaker, used to tell me I was the best thing that ever happened to him, usually right before he disappeared for nights at a time with promises of one last game and a big win coming. My mother died when I was 14, leaving me alone with a man who loved cards more than he ever loved his child. By 19, I had learned to read the tension in his jaw, the tremor in his hands, the way he avoided my eyes when he was about to do something unforgivable. The night everything shattered, he didn't come home drunk. He came home sober, which was worse. He asked me to sit down at the kitchen table, the one my mother used to polish every Sunday. There was a contract in front of him, thick, official, already signed by someone else. He said it was an opportunity, that a wealthy family from Boston wanted a live-in companion for their daughter, that I would live in a mansion, attend elite events, never worry about money again. He wouldn't look at me when he said the words, "They'll take care of your tuition, your future, everything." What he didn't say was that he had lost nearly $500,000 to them in private games, and I was the collateral. The family was the Ashbournes, old money wrapped in newer cruelty. The patriarch, Thaddeus Ashbourne, had cold slate eyes and a voice like polished steel. His wife, Seraphine, wore silk like armor and smiled as if she was constantly tolerating something unpleasant. Their daughter, Eloan, was fragile, chronically ill, and desperate for a friend. I was not hired to be her friend. I was installed as her shadow, her handler, her emotional buffer. In exchange, my father's debt would be wiped clean. I was not sold in chains, I was sold in paperwork. The first month in the Ashbourne estate felt like walking through a museum where I was the only exhibit that didn't belong. Marble floors, chandeliers like frozen waterfalls, hallways lined with oil paintings of stern-faced ancestors. Thaddeus made it clear I was there because of an agreement, not because of kindness. "Your father signed willingly," he reminded me over dinner one night, swirling red wine in a crystal glass. "And so did you." I hadn't, not really. I had signed because he told me we would lose the house, because he cried for the first time in years, because I was still foolish enough to believe a father wouldn't deliberately ruin his own child. Eloan grew attached to me quickly. She told me secrets about her parents, about how her illness worsened whenever Thaddeus had business troubles, about the way her mother whispered on late-night calls behind locked doors. I started to realize I was not just there to keep Eloan company. I was there to be leverage. If I misbehaved, if I tried to leave, my father's debt would magically reappear with interest, and he would be destroyed. Thaddeus liked reminding me of that, quietly, privately, with a hand on my shoulder that felt more like a threat than comfort. Then I discovered the real secret. One evening, while organizing documents in Thaddeus's study, I found a folder tucked behind a false panel in his desk. Inside were medical reports not for Eloan but for me. Blood tests, genetic screenings, psychological evaluations. My name was printed across every page. I wasn't there by coincidence. Years ago, when my mother was sick, she had participated in a clinical trial funded by Ashbourne Industries. My DNA was flagged as compatible for a rare experimental procedure meant to stabilize Eloan's degenerative condition. They had been tracking me since I was a child. My father's gambling addiction wasn't just a weakness. It was an opportunity they cultivated. Thaddeus had invited him to those high-stakes games on purpose. I wasn't collateral, I was inventory. The heartbreak of that realization broke something inside me that would never be repaired. My father hadn't just sold me to pay off debt. He had knowingly delivered me into a trap that had been set for years. When I confronted him over the phone, his silence said everything. He whispered, "They promised you'd be safe. They promised they'd take care of you." As if safety justified betrayal. I hung up before he could finish, and in that moment I stopped being his daughter. Revenge didn't come to me in a burst of rage. It came slowly, carefully, like frost spreading over glass. I played my role perfectly. I attended galas and gowns Seraphine selected. I held Alohan's hand during treatments. I smiled for photographs in lifestyle magazines that painted the Ashbournes as philanthropists. Meanwhile, I copied every confidential file I could access, every illegal transfer, every bribe disguised as a donation, every offshore account linked to medical cover-ups. Ashbourne Industries wasn't just experimenting on me, they were experimenting on dozens of vulnerable families who signed forms they didn't fully understand. The twist came from the one person I didn't expect, Alohan. She found me one night in the study, USB drive in hand, tears in her eyes. She had known about the plan all along. She had overheard her parents years ago discussing a genetic match in Maine. She told me she hated herself for benefiting from my suffering, that every treatment felt like it was stealing time from someone else. Instead of exposing me, she asked to help. She gave me access codes, private emails, recordings of her father boasting about manipulating desperate men like mine. The day everything exploded, I made sure it was public. During the Ashbourne Foundation's annual charity banquet, streamed live and attended by senators, CEOs, socialites, I stepped onto the stage uninvited. My hands trembled, but my voice did not. I told them who I was, how I came to be there, how Thaddeus Ashbourne engineered a gambling addiction to secure a human donor for his daughter. Screens behind me flickered from the foundation's logo to scan documents, bank transfers, recorded calls. The room went silent except for Seraphine's sharp intake of breath. Thaddeus tried to laugh it off, tried to call security, but the damage was done. Journalists surged forward. Phones recorded everything. By midnight, federal investigators were freezing accounts. By morning, Ashbourne Industries stock had plummeted. Lawsuits multiplied like wildfire. The empire built on secrecy began to crumble in real time. My father called me again after the scandal broke. This time he wasn't asking for forgiveness, he was begging for protection, claiming Thaddeus's lawyers were coming after him. I listened quietly, remembering every lonely birthday, every broken promise, every signature that sold my future. Then I told him the truth, that I had already handed over evidence of his involvement, that cooperation might reduce his sentence, that this was the consequence of choosing cards over his child. I ended the call with the calm finality he had once used on me. Alohan testified against her parents. She moved into a medical facility funded by the very restitution money seized from the Ashbourne accounts. As for me, I walked away with nothing but my name, my freedom, and a settlement that ensured I would never again be someone's bargaining chip. The house in Maine was gone, my father was gone, the illusion of family was gone. But I was still here. They tried to trade me, to use me, to erase me quietly behind mansion walls and legal contracts. Instead, I burned their legacy to the ground in front of the entire country. And if there is one thing I learned from the night my father placed that contract on the kitchen table, it is this: betrayal may break your heart, but revenge, when done patiently and publicly, can rebuild your soul from the ashes. Thanks for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe for more stories.